Have you ever wondered if independent musicians' days are kind of numbered? With the rise of AI generated content and how social media is going to change over the next couple decades, we often think, is there really going to be a place for DIY artists in the future? Well, what if I were to tell you that there are certain traits that are guaranteeing the downfall of DIY artists? And if we can just do the opposite of those things, we at least have a better shot at maintaining some longevity in the uncertain years that are coming up ahead of us, so we can position ourselves the best way possible. So stick around, because in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down what exact toxic traits we need to avoid and how those things are actually hurting musicians more than they think it's actually helping them. So the first thing that I want to talk about is something I've mentioned a couple times on this channel, but I've just had an experience with it dealing with clients over the past few years that it's really bugged me, and I think you guys will understand where I'm coming from here, which is artists, unfortunately, hide their ego and pretend like they don't have any ego when it comes to their marketing. They want to make sure that it's like, oh, I would never market my music like that on TikTok because, I have personal integrity, right? I would never debase my art by putting it on Spotify, man. I just have personal integrity. When it turns out that, unfortunately, that's not personal integrity. A lot of times it's ego. And I know some people are going to get mad when I say this, but here's the question that I often ask musicians to kind of figure out if they have legitimate, personal integrity grievances. I mean, it's not like we're asking you to reveal something for the music. We're talking about doing social media marketing, guys. It's not the end of the world here. So let me ask you this question. Would you rather have your personal integrity, really your ego, intact? You never posted on TikTok, you never caved in, you never put your music out there on Spotify, but ultimately you had no career from it? Or would you rather put your ego aside and do the social media marketing, do things that are a little bit outside your comfort zone, and actually see results in your music business? See, this is the big dilemma. This is the big problem that a lot of artists are dealing with, is they've positioned their ego as personal integrity. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't hear what I'm not saying. If someone comes up to you and is legitimately trying to get you to change and compromise your integrity, then of course you need to reject those opportunities because they're not worth it in the long run, right? I see this a lot with, unfortunately, female clients that are positioned by people that say, hey, if you do X, Y, and Z, we'll get you an opportunity. And it's like, yeah, that is compromising your integrity. But going out and putting your phone out and saying, hey, I made a song about X, Y, and Z, check it out, that is not debasing yourself or compromising your personal integrity, right? Using memes in your marketing is not compromising your personal integrity. So as musicians, we got to understand that there are certain traps in our creative minds that will say and try to justify, oh, no, it's okay that you don't get out of your comfort zone because I have personal integrity. It's like, whoa. Are we actually doing something that would compromise our integrity? Or is that the convenient excuse so we don't have to change and evolve? See, I often find that it's the latter, right? So in my would you rather answer, I would say I would rather have a career doing what I love, getting what I love out to as many people as possible with my music, and put my ego aside and make some videos maybe that are funny, or maybe I wanted to make a serious video and that's what I wanted the music to blow up around. But what if the fans wanted to consume more funny videos around it, and that was what was going to blow up? Am I going to let my ego as an artist say, well, screw what they want to consume, I want to make serious videos? And then when they don't get the views and they don't get the results and the response that we want, we go, oh, it's because this stuff doesn't work and blah, 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 when there was a perfectly good alternative that could have worked and maybe did work in the past, but we're like, I'd rather, make it more serious and about like this cool brand thing. Hey, the fans have spoken. And if the fans are like, we like this, when it comes to the marketing, listen to them. Because when it comes to the songwriting and who your brand is and what you represent, that's your decision. But when it comes to your marketing, how you present that brand to other people to get them interested in it, we absolutely have to alter that to what will minimize resistance and get the people who are going to be great fans to get that split second of interest in us that they wouldn't have otherwise had because they were in like chimp brain scroll mode, right? So we have to put our egos aside. Now, it's one thing, people are like, well, maybe my brand is a little bit more suave. My brand is a little bit more, I can't just do casual DIY things. Guys, I see people who are worth tens of millions of dollars that make this kind of content. So if they aren't, it's not beneath them, it's not beneath you. Do you understand? Like, we can't use these excuses that we shroud in like, no, I'm protecting my brand and my personal integrity, which is fine if you're in a position that would actually compromise that, but it's often used in situations where you're not compromising your integrity. You're not compromising your brand. You're just manipulating your marketing in such a way that will actually be most receptive, which I thought was the goal, right? And so that's where you start to see the answer for some musicians where they're like, no, I would rather have no career, but not compromise my personal integrity, meaning try new things with their marketing, right? And so that's an issue. That's something that is going to lead to the downfall of 90% of artists. I'm telling you guys, there are so many musicians out there that are struggling with this. And if you're a musician who's struggling with it and you're open to change and you're looking for answers and solutions, God bless you, because you're on the right path, because you at least acknowledge you're dealing with it and you're trying to get better at it. But there are so many musicians out there. Hopefully it's not y'all, and I don't think it is my audience. I think I'm lucky in that sense. But there's a lot of musicians out there, y'all, that will throw every excuse in the book as to why you and I shouldn't do X, Y, or Z. That's actually something that's empirically beneficial for our music career. You know, people talk about, well, Spotify. Should I put my album on Spotify? It's big evil corporation. I'm like, our main income source is not going to come from Spotify for years and years and years and years. So I could care less that I'm not making but a few pennies per stream. I mean, micro pennies per stream, because good enough content and good enough marketing drives people there. I had one piece of content where I was silly. I had just an idea. It took me 5 seconds because I was like, this would be a funny, silly idea. It got my song to over 1,000 streams per month. Per month from that one piece of content, right? So people were like, oh, but if I would have not had it on Spotify and people were out there looking, where can I get this? Where can I get this? And they had to go to YouTube, where the royalty payout is infinitely worse than Spotify. You know, or maybe they went to Apple Music, where the royalty rate is slightly better, but it's still micro pennies. You see what I'm saying? We would rather them just, it's like Google. It's like saying you don't want your business listed on Google, saying you don't want your music on Spotify. I'm sorry. People are like, what about this stuff in the copyrights about they can train data? By the way, stop listening to that music lawyer, that top music attorney. She's got good stuff when it comes to law, but she does fearmonger a lot. And I've known so many people that are like, oh, well, it says in the terms and conditions that they can train on my... No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Those things have been debunked. Like Andrew Southworth did a great job of just putting the nail in the coffin on that narrative. So I'd check out his videos on the topic where people have been misapplying the language that has been promoted. Like, oh, this says that artist stuff can get, blah, 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 blah. If you look into it, you find out, oh, that language only applies to users. And even if the user is a musician, that doesn't apply to their works that are uploaded via a distributor. Those are two separate agreements, right? So that's an example, though, of people are so tied into this idea that they would rather be right when they're not even really, unfortunately, they're not even being right, but they think, I'd rather be right than have success. And I'm like, I would rather have success, because what we're doing to get that success isn't unethical, immoral. I'm literally putting my music out on the Google for music so that other fans can consume it. So whenever they're like, hey, you on Spotify? I can say, yeah, of course. I'm not going to do... Now when people ask, are you on Spotify? I don't have to give them a 3-minute lecture about why I'm superior as an artist, because I don't really subscribe to the whole, blah, blah, blah. I give them a place they can listen to the music, because I ultimately know if they start listening to the music regularly, I can start getting them over into the social media, or I can start getting them over into the email list, which is the most important thing. If you've been watching my channel for a year, hopefully you've got an email list and you've got people that you're funneling into it. But that's the thing. I'm not focused on the Spotify as the revenue goal. But anyway, people get so wrapped up. Sorry, a little tangent there. People get so wrapped up in the idea, though, of like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to compromise. So don't get stuck in that trap if you're not actually doing something that compromises your integrity, right? Where they're actually telling you to change your values and your morals and debase yourself for some opportunity that's flippant. Like, come on now. Like, this is all bull. I'm not going to change my values for this kind of bullcrap, right? But that's not what a lot of people apply it to. Anyway, the second point is this mindset has actually leaned into this phenomenon called learned helplessness. So people, what they'll do is they'll get in this mindset of like, no, I'm not going to do the TikTok thing because that's for kids. I'm not going to market on TikTok. I'm not going to create an email list because that's like 80s technology. I'm not going to do X, and they just come up with excuses. And then what happens is when they don't get results, they blame externally. They say, oh, it's because Spotify, it's because of social media algorithms, it's because of labels, it's because of these people. And they blame externally like they had no control in the outcome, when they totally did. They just chose to do things that were more comfortable and safer with their ego than to do things that maybe got them out of their comfort zone, but actually got results, right? So this learned helplessness can be a huge problem because we start blaming externally and we start saying, oh, that's the reason I'm not getting results. It's not because I haven't quite got this content thing down or I haven't quite figured out the system to monetize. Couldn't be that. It could be that, oh, it's the algorithms have shadow banned me, right? And we see all these kind of excuses when 99% of the time you weren't shadow banned. The content just didn't connect. That's the honest to God's truth. When my content doesn't get very far, I'm like, I guess I just didn't connect. I got to try it differently. I don't take a personal offense to it. To me as an individual, I'm just like, I just need to test better and try a different hook, try a different angle, and I'll get there. That's the mindset you should have, right? Because all these things that I'm talking about, all these toxic mindsets, we need to have the opposite of these. So when people are like, my ego is more important, we need to say, no. Getting my music so that fans will consume it, so that I can get a fan base, that's priority number, like first step in the process, right? I'm not going to have this like shame about marketing myself. It's ridiculous. Now, what happens also is there's these limiting beliefs. Well, I'm just a creative, I'm just not good at marketing myself, right? And we start going into this learned helplessness where we create narratives around why we can't do something. I remember growing up, some of y'all may know this story. If you remember AR points, in elementary school, you'd read a book and you'd go take a test on it on the computer and you would score points based on how much you knew from the book. Well, I remember one year all my friends got up and got awards and I didn't get any awards, and it was really upsetting because they kind of made me feel like I was stupid, right? And so my counselor is like, hey, listen, you're just not a reader, Dax. And so when an authority figure kind of gave me this license to say, oh, that's why I'm not succeeding at this, it's because I'm not a reader. Right? And so now anytime for the rest of my academic career, which wasn't very long, but from elementary all through high school and a couple of years in college, I was thinking to myself, well, I'm just not a reader. I'm just not a reader. And so when reading heavy tasks would come my way, I'd be like, this is going to be tougher for me because I'm not a reader. And I would tell people that, and it would just, I was engraving this belief that was limiting my potential, because someone else told me that was probably the case. Not even like definitively. You're probably just not a reader. You're just not a reader probably, right? Well, I carried that limiting belief all through my life until I got out of college, and I was like, you know what? I hated that academic system, but I'm not against learning. I know I need to learn more. I just know that wasn't it. So I'm just going to start buying books that I'm interested in, right? Buying my own library and building that up, right? And as a result, all of a sudden, magically, I became a reader overnight. When you read things you're interested in, you can be more of a reader. It's a real shocking concept, I know. But it was one of those things that I started to break the belief. I started to go, oh, that was a self-imposed limitation. I told myself, oh, I can't read, but really, the fact of the matter was, I could read just fine. I was just giving myself this limitation of like, oh, you can't read. Or not like you can't read, but you're not a reader, Dax. You're not a reader. You're not a reader. And so you say that over and over again to yourself. How many self-doubting beliefs have you said to yourself over and 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 over again, even though there's no actual reason to limit yourself to that belief? So when people say, oh, I'm just a creative, what I hear is I'm just not a reader. When people say, oh, I'm just not really good at marketing myself, I hear, I'm just not a reader. We're choosing to have a limitation that actually doesn't exist. It's like we think there's a tightrope from one building to the next, but really it's a plank. And we're scared to move forward because we believe it's a tightrope, even though if we just stepped forward, we would be fine. But we have this belief in our head, like, no, it's going to be a tightrope. I'm going to fall over and die, right? No, but we imagine these limitations and let it rule our lives. And this learned helplessness is going to be the downfall of so many DIY artists because they're going to blame other people. They're going to accept that justification for their limiting beliefs from blaming other people. And then they'll just straight up have false beliefs, which are beliefs that are not just limitations of their potential, but things that are just factually untrue. So when they say things like, oh, I'm a creative, it should never be about the money. Unless you're a hobbyist, that's factually untrue. If you're a professional means you're in a profession, which means you're in a business, which means you are a business, okay? So the purpose of business without, I can give you some more like, hey, these are positive ways. The straight up truth about business is it's about profit so that you can do what? Make a living. So I know, shocker, again, I'm dropping bombshells here, but you have to pursue profit if you want to have a business. And musicians, we have these false beliefs like, oh, by pursuing profit, I am now therefore subordinating music to profit. It's like, no. Music can still have a high place here, and we can also pursue profit. Just because we pursue profit doesn't mean we're all of a sudden putting money as more valuable than the music. We're saying, oh, I need the money or else I have no music business. So you see the difference there. But that's a false belief. So people go around and they say things that are actually anti what they really want. And I know this might piss some people off, but luckily I'm not running for political office. You don't have to vote for me. That's okay. So luckily I can have my opinion and you can have yours too. It's really great. But I have this idea that pisses off some musicians where I'm like, you can't go around and claim to be anti-free market as a musician who's trying to be a professional musician, because the very fact that you provide something of value and you want people to exchange their money for this thing of value that you have is by definition the free market. And so you're participating in commerce, and there's nothing wrong with that. But people have this false belief that if I participate in commerce as an artist, that I'm somehow subordinating the art to commerce. And that's not the case at all. The commerce is the fuel so the art gets to as many people as humanly possible. So if you knew that you got more money that would lead to more people knowing about your music, wouldn't the pursuit of profit be a good goal because it helps you get your music out to more people, which is the ultimate goal? Just saying. Now, the last thing I'll kind of finish out this video on is the combination of all these things, right? Okay, so they're very ego, unfortunately, driven. So a lot of these DIY artists that we're trying not to be like are very ego driven, right? They have learned helplessness. So they have this ego that's protecting them from doing anything new. So they don't get any results. Then they have this learned helplessness because they haven't got results and they're not blaming the right things. And then what happens? They have no plan. And so they stay stuck. So if you're trying to get unstuck, let's say, hopefully I haven't been too harsh on anybody that maybe has watched this and is struggling with all these things. Hopefully you feel a little bit more like, oh, I can overcome these things. But the final touch here is to get unstuck, you have to have a plan. So if you're stuck in this spiral of learned helplessness, the only thing that's going to get you out is if you have a plan, a process to get you out of that situation, okay? So when people say things like, well, just post more, right? If you just post more, you'll get more fans and then magically money will just appear inside of your bank account. Well, that's not how it works, unfortunately. I've had many clients come to me who have earned, when I say earned, they've gained 100,000 followers, 200,000 followers and more. But you look at their bank account and they're not getting very much income, if at all, from this. So if it was just true that getting attention, getting fans was all you needed, those people would already be earning. But the problem is they don't have a process. So you have to have a process. And people may say things like, well, labels will do the process stuff. Put it this way, labels nowadays, here's how you know if a label's a scam. To me, all labels are scams pretty much. There's obviously I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but here's how you kind of really know. If a label comes up to you and says, give me thousands of dollars and we'll blow you up for you, they're almost 100% a scam. But then if a legitimate label finds you, like Atlantic or somebody, and they find you, what they're going to ask you is, where are your processes? And if you don't have a process to have garnered a fan base, turn that into revenue, they don't want to invest in you because they're like the sharks in Shark Tank now. And you come up to them and you say, hi, I'm blah, 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 and I have 100,000 monthly listeners. And so we've got some traction and here's why you should invest in me. The sharks don't invest in businesses where they come up and they go, I have an idea. I'm potentially one day going to have millions of fans. How many fans do you have right now? I have 5. How many sales have you made? I've made none. But one day I'll make 1 million. How? I don't know. The sharks don't invest in those kind of businesses, and labels would not invest in you if that's what you approach them with. So any label that would take you, if that's how you approach them, is a scam. Ask me how I know. I paid for that. And so you don't have to make my same mistakes that I did years ago. Please don't make those mistakes. It'll save you so much more money. So the point is, if you want to get unstuck out of this, you have to have a process. A process for what, Dax? Everything. You have to have a process that takes your fan from like not knowing about you at all to creating pieces of content that get their attention just enough for them to care. Because otherwise, if you don't give them a reason to care, there's 800 musicians on their feed already. They've already seen people like you before that day. I hope you know that already. So you got to do something that kind of like stops their attention and gets them to pay attention to you. And once you do that, we can't just be like, oh, you paid attention to me. Here's a grimace shake trendy video. Ha! No, you have to be able to connect them to the music in that very moment. And then once you do that, enough times you'll start accumulating people who are interested in your music. Then you need to have a system of reaching out to those people and getting them into your list that you own, whether that's a text list or an email list. So that way you own their contact information, not Google, not TikTok, not whoever, right? And then you have to have a system to sell them something. You have a system to present an offer they actually want to buy and is like gonna get you some margin, right? It's cool we could sell a $5 sticker, so every sale you make $4, but I'd rather make it to where every sale you make $25, $26, $30, $40, right? Even if you had to even if that was after all your expenses and paid for all your margin, it was just $25 or $20. That is infinitely better margins than you're getting on Spotify. And it's way better margins than just like a $5 sticker or something like that. So you have to have a system for each step in this process, okay? And so if you haven't yet begun that journey, I've got tons of videos here on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, notification bell to get notified when more content like this comes out. And you can go scroll through the channel. There's playlists. There's even a cool new feature called courses on YouTube. So I might start organizing content into like mini courses on YouTube. So kind of be on the lookout for that. But if you'd like some one-on-one help from me to help you actually implement the systems that I've put into systems for other musicians that have gotten them over $50,000 in revenue. It's so cool. They've earned over $50,000 using these systems, and I couldn't be more excited because that shows you that independent and DIY artists have a pathway forward, but we just can't fall into the same traps and past, limiting beliefs that have held us down. All right, so if you'd like some one-on-one help, click the link that's in the description to set up a one-on-one call. It's totally free just to see if I could actually help you implement this stuff inside of your music business. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you on another video inside of Musicians Ignite. Take care.